employees lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother and covered up what they knew from their internal investigation.
Did Queen Camilla secretly strike at Diana's memory? Shocking reports suggest Catherine broke down in tears after a sacred royal relic was ruined forever. The tension inside the palace is boiling over, and you need to see why. Stick with us and make sure you subscribe for more updates. Imagine walking into a place that few ever enter. The air is cool, the walls plain, and silence presses in like a weight. This is the vault, known among staff as the final resting place for garments too important to be displayed casually. Among those garments was one piece above all others, Diana's wedding gown. According to palace whispers, Catherine walked into that chamber with one question repeating in her mind. Could the rumors possibly be true? The heavy box at the center was already open. What she saw inside did not look like a treasured relic. Instead, silk was sliced into strips, pearls were scattered across the floor like fallen stars, and the long train that once commanded a cathedral had been reduced to ribbons. In that stillness, Catherine is said to have found something else, something she did not expect. Nestled among the fabric was a tiny gold charm, a horseshoe, once hidden inside the seams as a symbol of good luck. For decades, few even knew it existed. To see it now, out in the open, felt like the final confirmation that the gown had truly been undone. Her grief was overwhelming. This wasn't just about a dress. For her husband, for his brother, for their children, this gown carried meaning. It was the one piece of their mother that still seemed untouched by time. Now even that connection had been cut apart. If you were in Catherine's place, would you have stayed silent or spoken out? To understand the weight of this discovery, we need to remember what the gown once represented. On July 29, 1981, the world stopped to watch a young woman step into history. Diana Spencer arrived at St. Paul's Cathedral in an ivory silk taffeta gown that seemed pulled from a storybook. The gown was extravagant yet delicate. Its antique lace carried whispers of the past. Its sleeves were grand, its skirt wide, and its 25-foot train seemed to flow endlessly down the cathedral steps. Around the neckline, pearls were stitched one by one, catching the light as if the gown itself were glowing. Hidden deep inside was that tiny golden horseshoe, placed there as a private blessing. When Diana stepped out of her carriage, the crowd gasped. It wasn't just the sight of a bride, it was the sight of a fairy tale made real. For hours, the world tuned in, neighbors gathering around shop windows, families clustering in living rooms, villages pausing just to watch. Nearly 1 billion people shared the same picture. Diana glowing in white silk, walking toward her future. The gown became a global symbol. To some, it represented innocence and hope. To others, it marked the beginning of a new chapter for the monarchy. It was treasured not only for its beauty, but for the story it carried. A story of transformation, courage, and the weight of history. That is why decades later, any harm to it feels far deeper than cloth. It feels like a fracture in memory itself. What detail made that gown unforgettable to you? The flowing train, the antique lace, or the moment it appeared before the world? Rumors say that one quiet afternoon, the vault was unlocked under the guise of an inspection. The corridor leading to it was narrow and cold, the hum of lights echoing faintly as the heavy door swung open. A small kit was carried inside, ordinary tools, scissors, brushes, pads, nothing extravagant, but more than enough to change history. One by one, the latches on the box were opened. Inside, the ivory silk seemed almost alive in the dim light. At first, there was only silence. Then a faint sound, the snip of a blade through thread. A pearl slipped free, rolling across the table before coming to rest. Another cut followed, another pearl fell. Piece by piece, the gown was said to unravel. According to whispers, there was a quiet remark during the process. Something about a room being ruled too long by a relic. Whether it was defiance, frustration, or a desire to reset the balance, no one knows for sure. What is clear is that the result left more questions than answers. Was this an act of defiance, a mistake, or a calculated attempt to reshape the narrative? Which motive feels most convincing to you? Defiance, fear, or control? If the accounts are true, Catherine did not stay quiet. Soon after her discovery, she walked into a palace drawing room, where Camilla sat by the window. The air in the room grew tense as Catherine placed a strip of torn silk on the table. Her words were sharp with grief. She spoke of memory, of family, of how this gown was not just thread, but a presence for William, Harry, and their children. She accused Camilla of destroying it out of envy, of refusing to live in Diana's shadow. Camilla's response was steady. She argued that the palace had been haunted by comparisons for decades. Every smile, every gesture measured against someone no longer there. She insisted she would not bow to a ghost. In that moment, two truths clashed, one side defending legacy, the other demanding freedom from it. Neither yielded, and the torn fabric lay between them like a wound. Are symbols meant to be guarded forever or reinterpreted by each new generation? When Catherine showed William what remained of the gown, the weight of it was clear in his silence. He did not shout, he did not cry, he stood still, his jaw tight, his expression set. He touched one of the torn edges, felt the lifeless silk between his fingers, and then let it fall. From the fragments, he gathered a few pearls. One he slipped into his pocket, one he handed to Catherine, and one he left by the window inside the vault, like a silent guardian over what had been lost. His orders were simple. Every thread, every pearl, every fragment was to be preserved exactly as it was. Nothing would be repaired, nothing would be hidden. The box would be closed again, but this time it would hold the truth of what had happened, not the perfection of what once was. Would you have chosen to restore the gown or preserve it as it is now? When the news reached Harry, insiders say he sat still for a long time. He listened to the account of what had happened, each detail cutting deeper. The scissors, the pearls, the strips of silk carried away. For him, the gown was more than a relic. It was one of the last links to his mother that felt tangible, safe, preserved. Now even that safety was gone. To him, it felt like losing her presence once more. Later, when he spoke with William, the silence between the brothers said more than words. For them, the gown had been something they shared, a point of unity. Now that point had been scattered into fragments. What object in your life carries meaning so deep you would never want to lose it? 3 details from the alleged destruction raise questions. The first is the golden horseshoe. Few outside the designers had ever known it was there, yet it appeared among the fragments. Why was it pulled free? Who revealed its secret placement? The second is the trail of pearls. Pearls don't simply fall at random. Observers claim they seem to roll in deliberate paths, hinting at where scissors had moved and how carefully the fabric had been handled. The third is the cut lines themselves. Rather than jagged or uneven, they followed chosen seams. This suggests intention, not haste. It paints a picture of someone who knew what they were doing and why. Together, these clues raise the possibility that this wasn't accident or carelessness. It may have been a message. Which clue feels most convincing to you, and why? This is about more than fabric. It is about the meaning of legacy. Some say legacy is held in objects, artifacts passed from one generation to the next, carrying weight and memory. Others argue that true legacy is presence, the choices made in the present, the actions that carry meaning into the future. For William and Catherine, the gown may have been lost, but its meaning could be carried in another way. They began to see legacy not as silk in a box, but as compassion shared with the living. Where should legacy truly live? In things or in people? The vow Catherine and William allegedly made was simple. If the gown could not survive, then Diana's spirit would. They would carry her memory forward, not through relics, but through action. Catherine began focusing even more on children, families, and communities in need. She made quiet visits, spent time listening, and supported causes close to her heart, causes that echoed Diana's compassion. William worked alongside her, particularly on mental health, reminding people that his mother's influence was never far from his mind. At home, they ensured their children knew the stories. They spoke of Diana's warmth, her kindness, her courage, and the way she touched lives. They took the children to gardens built in her honor, to hospitals where she once worked, to places where her presence could still be felt. The tiny gold horseshoe Catherine had taken from the fragments became a private symbol of their vow. Kept safe in a small box, it reminded them that memory doesn't need fabric to live on. What's one simple act you could do to honor someone's memory today? There are 3 main ways people view the alleged incident. The first is the shadow theory. According to this perspective, the act was an attempt to reject decades of comparison, to end the constant measuring of one life against another. The second is the reset theory. In this view, the destruction was symbolic, meant to move the family away from relics of the past and toward a focus on present service. Painful, yes, but designed to free the future from the weight of objects. The third is the human theory. This one is simple. People are complicated. Stress, emotion, and history can lead to choices that are not perfect, but deeply human. Which of these lenses do you think explains this story best? The gown, if the rumors are true, will never be restored. Instead, the fragments have been preserved exactly as they were found. Torn silk, scattered pearls, and seams cut cleanly through. It is less an artifact now than a record, a snapshot of what was lost. The question remains, Should these fragments ever be shown to the world? Some say yes, as a lesson in history and symbolism. Others believe they should remain sealed away, guarded quietly in the vault, never to be displayed. Would you rather see the fragments displayed or hidden forever? At the heart of this story is a question bigger than silk and lace. Can objects truly carry the weight of legacy, or does it live in the actions of those who come after? The gown was once called the dress of the century. Now it exists only in memory and in fragments. But the meaning it carried, compassion, presence, and courage, continues in the lives of those who choose to keep it alive. Objects can inspire us, but it is people who carry the light forward. So let me ask you, if you had to choose, would you protect the relic or protect the people?